Hi everyone, I'm Mims and welcome back to the channel. I am staying with my mother right now. She had a medical emergency. It looks like everything is going to be fine, and that's not why I'm popping in, and I didn't even mean to share that much information. But I did want to just talk about, and it made me think about it. I was in the shower and I just had this moment of thinking about perspective, a change of view, a change in perspective, and even just being able to think outside of your own viewpoint. And I've been thinking about this over the last few days because I came down to stay with my mother. My two sisters and I talked briefly, and it was kind of decided that I would be the one. I had the most flexibility, that I could come down and stay. And I resented the decision at the moment because it didn't really feel like it was an equal conversation. But later on, I realized, like, no, I really can do this, and I will step up in this case. Anyway, that part doesn't necessarily matter, but there have been a series of things that have happened over the last few days that have helped me to think a little bit more about that change in view and that change in perspective. And specifically, why I think so many of us look to tarot for that very thing. There have been a couple of things. I have been feeling quite stuck in my own personal life in terms of, particularly within my living situation. And there's something like, even if it's not getting out of town for fun, but getting out of town and getting out of the same 4 walls or the same 12 walls or whatever it is of the place where I'm living. So there's that. Now, I know that not everybody gets to travel due to budget and all sorts of things. And then there's refugees, right? Forced migration, because the situation that people are fleeing from is so horrible too. So I get that what I'm talking about is not the same thing. But anytime that we are particularly willing and able to change our perspective, it can give us a different viewpoint of our own problems, of our own prejudices, of our own proclivities, and so forth. We sometimes just get so stuck on doing the same things. I have the same breakfast every morning, or having coffee at the same time, or having the same schedule, or walking the dog in the same route. Whatever those kinds of things are, it's lovely when you can get a shakeup of that perspective, particularly when it's voluntary. Again, I'm not comparing my situation to refugees or anything like that. But I am saying that when we do get a chance to look beyond our own viewpoint, it can help us to see the world in a larger way, right? That we can start to understand the lives of others, that we can start to understand maybe even a political viewpoint that we don't agree with. And while we may not condone that particular viewpoint, we can at least maybe begin to understand how someone might get to a particular viewpoint, right? And then sometimes a viewpoint can also be as shallow as what you see in the mirror. And I've had a couple of examples of that recently. In where I live, not where I'm right now, but where I live, I have a bathroom mirror, but it pretty much only covers like this much of me. So I see it when I brush my teeth or, wash my face, things like that. I don't have a full-length mirror, so I don't necessarily see all of me, and I don't seek that out. But there was something today. My mom is at a doctor's appointment, and I took a shower while she was gone. And she has a much bigger bathroom mirror. And there's something to seeing more of me than I normally see. And even just brushing my teeth and my pajamas this morning, it was still seeing a different viewpoint. Now again, I'm not saying that looking in the mirror or in a different mirror is enough to solve the world's problems, because it's not. But it does help to even see things slightly differently, right? It makes me think a little bit of Alice in the Looking Glass, Alice in Wonderland. And things were not completely the opposite, but just, and then she had a completely different take on her life after she got back. And that's often in works of fiction, right? The traveler is often, the main character. And they have perspective that all the people around them don't have the same perspective. Or an author, or a first-person memoir or something where they see themselves as the outsider. And so they feel like they maybe have a broader perspective. Or I was even thinking, I like photography, and I was watching a photography YouTube channel the other day, someone that I really like, and she'd gotten a new camera, and she was talking about whatever the angle of the lens that she was using was completely different than what she had used before. So there's all sorts of ways of thinking about perspective. And then bringing this back to tarot, I wasn't going to necessarily, I did have enough of a chance to grab a few things before I left. This wasn't in a rush. So I did have a moment to okay, if I'm going to be gone for a week, what is it that I'm going to take with me, etc. And I grabbed some stuff for work, not sure if I would be able to work, but knowing that I'd be able to cancel classes if I needed to. But I did bring some tarot along. And this is a deck that I've been using in the month of June, kind of as a deck study. And the Adventure Tarot, one of the things that I really love about it is it's a road trip inspired deck. So if you are, in this case, traveling, and that's kind of what this one is, you can find yourself sometimes, right? And I've heard people talk about decks in the way of, I love this view of the Nine of Swords. Very different than, this is a different perspective on a dark night of the soul. There's a peacefulness here. I almost see a little bit of maybe Four of Swords in this case. Or I love this card, the Three of Swords. Often, I love how it's not such a take, but at the same time, I don't think that this deck shies away from darkness either. Anyway, one of the things that I love about this deck is while it skews young, I can see myself in this deck. But one of the things that I think that tarot gives us, regardless of what deck we're using, and regardless of what the viewpoint of that particular, or the theme of that particular deck is that tarot helps us, I think, get perspective on our questions and our issues and our problems and our dilemmas of our own lives. And because we seek that out, I think, as readers and lovers of tarot, and when I say tarot, I also include oracle, whatever you might use as your source in your spiritual practice. I think one of the things that it helps us to do is we have to somewhat step out of our problem or our question to be able to pose the question to the tarot cards, whether we're reading for ourselves or we're reading for others. And in the same way that some people might go to a good friend, that friend who can give you a perspective, maybe not always advice, but can just give you a different perspective. I think that that's what tarot does. And tarot helps us in that way. And sometimes it doesn't solve the problem, but being able to see it in a different way, maybe even, if my viewpoint's always here, but all of a sudden I can see it from here, or even having a different background in a video, there's something to perspective that maybe what seemed so daunting before is less daunting. Or in the case of a health emergency, the health that we take for granted, or that I take for granted, maybe I realize you know, I'm of an age, I'm about to have a birthday in a few days, you know, maybe I need to start thinking about my health more holistically and not just like, oh, someday I want to do that. And that I want to think about my health not just in terms of my body, but my soul, my mind, my spirit, like everything, physically, emotionally, spiritually. I want to take all of that into account. And we don't always have to have a tower moment. That's kind of funny because this feels like a little tower. We don't always have to have a tower moment to have that happen. But perspective, whether it's looking in a different mirror or, you know, seeking out tarot or seeking out oracle cards, all of those things, it can just help us. And I'm really grateful to tarot for that. So I will talk to you soon and hope to see you in another video. Take care.